Blowing my mind had not been on the agenda for the evening, despite the fact that I had already ingested DXM and smoked DPT concurrently. I have been fiddling with mid-sized doses of DXM as a base point from which to propel my DPT experience lately, which worked rather well. I had some leftover cannabis that had become saturated in the DPT-free base oil of a previous experiment. I had saved these leftovers in a plastic container for several weeks, so as not waste anything. I fear that all too soon these compounds will dissipate into the fog of memory, in light of recent developments in the research community. Perhaps the general malaise in knowing that the scene is dying had led me to a recent lapse in maintaining any semblance of scientific methodology to my experiments. A sort of anomie of the soul, letting myself swish wistfully away in the chemical currents of the last wave. Why bother keeping notes if these substances are soon to wither up and disappear? It was that type of thinking that led to the following experience, as I had not properly labeled the contents of that plastic container. But I am jumping too far ahead of myself. 9:42 p.m. Approximately 450 mg DXM was swallowed in a gel cap with Diet Pepsi. I had taken 2 muscle relaxers, Skelaxin 400 mg, earlier in the day, 5.5 hours prior to the DXM, that was prescribed by my doctor for muscle spasms in my back. I am not sure if they influenced the experience or not, but they were in my system nonetheless. I am planning on smoking some DPT-free base oil once the DXM kicks in. I am hoping that this night will yield an outburst of music creativity, as both DXM and DPT have that effect on me on their own, as well as together. Previous experiments at lower levels of DXM with DPT were successful, but were rather unengaging in terms of intensity. 12:33 a.m. I am in the thick of it. I smoked approximately 45 mg DPT-free base oil on top of cannabis in a glass pipe. My mood was a bit off prior to smoking the DPT. I felt somewhat removed and also slightly depressed as well. I attributed this emotion to the dissociative aspect of the DXM. Without cannabis, DXM usually puts me in a somewhat depressed mood at the mid-2p dosage levels. After smoking the DPT though, my day-to-day sense of mood was instantaneously erased as a topic of thought in my concept of reality. I laid on the couch and listened to some sound Tribe Sector 9 in the dark and felt myself levitating above the couch. My eyes were closed and I had the distinct sensation of entering into another place, as if passing through a dividing membrane of sorts. The state of mind I was in was quite comparable to that of a mid-level ketamine experience, the only difference being that my head did not feel awash in warm mind juice. Surprisingly, I felt rather lucid. I had strong sense that my thoughts were directly connected to my environment, to what I perceived. I would stare at the walls and strange geometric chords would branch out towards me, slowly groping towards my third eye area, and connecting to the locus of my thoughts. The scenario reminded me of an airplane refueling in midair, how the refueling hose is maneuvered to connect the two planes. This was a very reassuring and much needed confirmation of a general belief that a tangible connection between the self and the world exists. Music sounds quite nice at this point. This is a wonderful and powerful combination. 2:45 a.m. I decided to smoke cannabis that had been soaked in DPT-free base left over from a previous experiment. I did not know the exact quantity used during the last experiment, but I figured that whatever I was going to smoke now, it was roughly half as much as what I attempted last time. So, I assumed I was within the realms of caution. It turned out to be foolish of me to be so flippant in my consumption of drugs as I took a large hit, and held it for 20 seconds or so. I held the smoke in, and I began to realize that this weed also had a decent amount of DMT left in it as well. The sensation of DMT was easily discernible from the other experiences. Everything had a much more intense flavor than DPT plus DXM alone. I had not labeled the contents of the plastic container, and I completely forgot that I had used both DMT and DPT in that experiment. I could easily have landed myself in some trouble here, but something was watching out for me, as I was able to keep my cool and maintain a steady heart rate and breathing rate without any detectable levels of anxiety. Usually, if my heart beats faster than normal, I automatically grow anxious and concerned. This time, perhaps due to the dissociative qualities of the DXM, I was removed from my fears. I was unable, however, to remain standing for long after I exhaled. I was flat on my back on the couch within 45 seconds. I did so with a sense of urgency, as I thought I might black out. My visual field seems to be hypercharged. Everything beams with twice the clarity of my sober vision. I feel everything emitting a sense of importance or meaning. I formed vision of myself as an apple floating in the middle of a still lake, under a starless midnight sky fills my mind. I am having no thoughts outside of this image. It is a rather splendid and engrossing thought. I feel myself almost sinking and growing warmer. Note, the temperature in the room of the experience is quite cold, in an unheated basement in the winter. I feel the link between my mind and the environment stronger than ever before. What I felt earlier this evening seems like a mere trickle in comparison to the tidal flood of connectivity that I was experiencing now. What I wrote at the time was, visuals twist in time to the music, which syncs up perfectly with the pocket of pleasure, the orb of glowing delight swaddled in the cradle of my mind, like an apple floating in a calm midnight lake. I felt myself let go more than I ever have before. I thought to myself, if I die, then what can I do about it now? I then suddenly relaxed into the experience completely. This is when I began to have the above-mentioned apple vision. With the thought to let go, I felt myself swell with a warm glowing sensation, as if the insides of my body were being washed with a warm spray of water. As this was going on, I became aware of the knotted up, spasming muscles in my body that I had seen my doctor earlier in the day about. They felt like separate entities to me, almost like foreign intruders. They did not feel as if they were a part of me. I was floating in sense of lightness and light, everything was exuberant and glowing. But then these clusters of muscles seemed grayish-brown and overly solid. I was amazed at how easily I could stop my thoughts and focus entirely on my body. I was able to relax and charge muscles with bioenergy currents with almost no effort or concentration. These acts of self-healing came naturally, and without verbal thought. After about 15 minutes, the experience drops down several levels in intensity. That was the most intense psychedelic experience I have ever had, far surpassing a particularly mind-blowing Salvia 10X experience I had a couple of years back. I have never felt such an obvious and intense connection to my body, the world around me, or my thoughts ever before. It was not complete union, but it was as close as I have ever come. I am grateful that the powers that be which guided me to and through this wondrous experience safely. I feel a renewed connection to my life and feel thankful for having been given a taste of the energy that I am part of.